Namaskar, Nileshok here, and welcome to the series Ramayana KalaNirnaya, and this would be part 3. If you have not seen part 1 and part 2, every reason to stop this video and go look at part 1 and part 2, very critical, before you can understand what is being discussed here. Through this series, Ramayana KalaNirnaya, the dating of Ramayana as an intuition engine, I am using this platform to share how a original research is done anywhere, but specifically in the Indic space, the importance of Shraddha, Praman, Vivek, Upasana, Abhyas, and many other things. Okay, Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, and so many other aspects. At some level, you will start realizing that these are not different aspects, or these are not different things. They actually work in unison, okay, work together. But in order that we understand them, we have to separate them, okay? We have to do the prathakkaran, understand them and bring it together. Again, whatever is being discussed here is applicable to everyday life, applicable to our everyday affairs, business, family, social circles, our goals, objectives at workplace, for your personal life, outside, inside, in businesses. It is applicable everywhere. How to make use of it? It's a common sense. Everyone can learn in their own way, at their own pace. They are shared here with that very spirit. Part 3. These are the books. Again, one of the specific objective, I would say, as it relates to the dating of Ramayana, is not that you watch these videos and you understand everything. No, that won't happen. Now, for very exceptional few folks, it may be useful. But if you truly want to understand, truly want to get these genuine or very deep insights from these talks, you must study this book. You must read this book, read multiple times. The first book that I wrote, The Historic Ram, that was in 2014. It's available on Amazon around the world, The Historic Ram. Subo Publications, few years later, came up with the Indian version of it. The title is different, 12,209 BC, actually easier title. Do you remember when exactly Mahabharata, what happened? Specifically Ram Ravan Yuddha, 12,209 BCE. How long ago is that? Well, all you have to do is take that number and add to that the current year, like 2023. You would know exactly how many years ago Ram Ravan Yuddha happened, and therefore Ramayana. The book has been translated and already published as an abridged version in Hindi. The title of that book is Ramakatha, Graha Nakshatron ke Aine Se. It has been translated by Dr. Nandini Narayanji. And the Marathi translation has been done by Alka Godbole, and it has been published via Param Mitra Publications, Param Mitra Prakashan. That book is available through Book Ganga or Amazon.in, as in Amazon India. It's also available on Book Ganga, and of course within India, through your local bookstore. You can always request them, and if they are willing, they will always get you a copy if that's what your choice is. All right, let's go further. In this particular session, part 3, I would like to discuss some aspects of how we critique a claim. Now, unless there is a critique of a claim, and unless a particular claim faces the resistance, and not only it faces the resistance, but it successfully thwarts those critical attempts to find holes into it, with flying colors, in that very exercise is the strength of that claim and a theory, such as my theory that all Ramayana astronomy descriptions from Valmiki Ramayana, when I say Ramayana here, are actual descriptions of the Ramayana times. And based on that, close to 600 astronomy descriptions, objectively tested in a scientific fashion, empirically, and brought together in a logical fashion for the unified date of 12,209 BC. And so now, of course, people criticize it, critique it, and that's their job. I mean, it's a great thing that is happening. But from the point of view of an individual who wants to do the study, in fact, with the thing with critique and criticism is this: for an original researcher, I would say, and I just say this to all the people that I'm mentoring, like they say, okay, how do I prepare for a presentation? They think, or they have actually done some original work. And I say, if you are presenting your work, could be anywhere, a conference, workshop, some lecture, let's say, or to a group of people, just at your house, or you are someplace, doesn't matter what context, or a conference, or at a university, wherever that is. During the question answer session, first thing, you should encourage a question answer session. Many people just don't do it. And I sometimes rightfully so, because, many people who don't even know how to ask the question. In fact, they have this supta desire to be the speaker, but they don't have enough confidence to do it. So what do? When their turn comes for a question and answer session, they give you a big lecture or a mini lecture. Okay. So we have to be, people get tired and say, and say, come on, I mean, how come people don't have basic common sense? But the second aspect is, people will ask the same frequently asked questions, but don't be so lazy that they will not look at the previous talks. They will not read the book. They will not read the blogs. I experience it all the time. That could be one. But there are many who are truly scared of the question answer session. Well, if you have done original work and if you're confident about it, you should look forward to a question answer session. If you are scared, which means you are not confident of your work. There is other element to it, which is this, which is I use in my mentoring, which is to say, I say, when the question answer session happens related to your original work, let's say after your presentation, and if you hear a question that you have never heard before, or that you have never thought in your mind before that someone may ask a question like this, or you are shocked or surprised by such a question, then basically you have not prepared yourself well. The point I'm trying to emphasize is, you as an individual, as a researcher, original researchers, one has to be one's biggest, harshest, and toughest critic. When you do that, nothing is going to surprise you. When somebody, even in their, in their genuine desire, or out of ragat dvesha moha, out of some emotional reaction, out of being envious of you, or out of their sheer stupidity, doesn't matter what the reason is, when they ask a question that runs along those lines, guess what? You would only be smiling. Why? Because you have already thought about it, not only the question, but the answer. That's the kind of preparation is required. Okay. So when you do that, then the critique is actually a joyful. Now, it may be frustrating because, the intention is not correct, or the majority of the people don't understand that this is not even a genuine criticism, and so on. Rebuttal. I mean, people will use all these words, but still, there's a discussion going on about your work and you should be happy. Okay. All right. Again, this picture, if that surprises you, then you have not watched part 1 and 2, or not listened to many of my other talks. You need to do that if this surprises you. This is the doubt clearing machine, Samshay Nivaran Yantra. It has got 7 aspects, 5 in the middle, that is that Pararth Hanuman, or the logic of scientific method. And where do you use it? You use it to solve certain problem, okay, or to clear the confusion. And if you're successful, it leads you to your ultimate objective, to either know the answer or eliminate the confusion and reach one specific conclusion. So there are 7 elements to this. Okay. Now, the point is, in critiquing it, if, let's say, I put forward my claim, and therefore any given claim, now, in this context, let's say the dating of Ramayana, like 12,209 BC. If I'm making that claim, in the background, whether I have it written or not, whether it is in my blog or in my talks or in my book or in my PowerPoint, whether it is there or not, it's good to have it, But the more important point is these 7 elements are crystal clear to me. They better be crystal clear to me so that I can communicate if somebody asks. And every person, if somebody has a claim, any other person has a right in the way, with respect, to ask for these 7 things, like what problem you are working on, or what is your theory, and what evidence it leads to that, what evidence this theory leads to. Or they can take a particular piece of evidence and question it. How come you are using this as a evidence? Is it coherent with your, congruent with your Ramayana? Okay, those are all valid questions. And of course, then you can talk about objective testing. What method did you use? Do you trust your method? Do you trust your instrument? Do you trust whatever you are using? What background knowledge did you use? Okay, and did you draw nishkarsha? Did you draw inference every single time at the end of every instance of objective testing? Did you unify them? These are all good questions. The point is, if you have an objection, you cannot say, well, on this diagram, I have objection here, here, and here. No, that's not allowed. Okay. At any given time, you should find out your toughest objection that you think. And if you are critiquing yourself, you say, where is this particular, this doubt clearing machine, the way I have filled it, which part or which particular point is the weakest point in my argument? If you are doing it yourself, if the other person, you are critiquing somebody, you have to point out the toughest problem that you see for that person, the most important point, the most important challenge, most important concern, whatever the language you want to use. That's the idea. But at any given point, one. Why is that? Because usually when something, one particular point is wrong, it affects all other points. That is number one. Besides, if you are discussing two things, imagine an equation with two variables, and if you are changing both variables together, you may miss the optimum. Okay, that's also another way of explaining it. There are 10 other ways I can explain it, but if you haven't got the point with these 2 or 3 examples, probably you're not going to get that point. Which is to say, a critique or a criticism of any issue, anything, has to be piecemeal. Okay, one at a time, step by step. You cannot just say, oh, these 3 things are wrong and I want you to explain it. Now, out of those 3 things, I have a right, or original research should have a right and must ask, which of these 3 things you consider most troublesome, most problematic? As an example, I give this. Individuals will come to me and they will say, well, Nileshji, you have done this, you have done this work, Rama, tremendous work, praise me, whatever, or not praise me, but say, okay, 12,209, but so and so doesn't agree with you. And usually I ask, okay, so that's fine. So there is a sanshay now, and we have to remove the sanshay. We, as in that fellow, has to remove the sanshay. I don't have a sanshay. If I have a sanshay, I don't wait for somebody to come and tell me. I will go and study other person's work to see what is good and bad in it. But if this person has this doubt, it is his or her responsibility to eliminate that doubt. Therefore, the person has approached me for help. It's very important you understand that. When some person comes and says, oh, yeah, you are saying this, but he's saying this, now explain it to me. The person thinks it is his or her right. No, you don't have any rights. It's a privilege when somebody explains it to you. And therefore, Bhagavad Gita gives a method. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshantite jnanam dhyanina sattvadarshina. Are you humble? Okay. Are you truly desirous? Athato brahma jidnyasa, athato dharma jidnyasa, athato satya jidnyasa. Are you truly curious to know the truth? Nobody is obliged to tell you this. That's very important. People understand this. So now I want to ask a question. When somebody comes like this, I ask them a question. I said, have you read my work? Have you read the other person's work? Many times the answer is no. I said, well, so why the hell are you wasting my time? Read both works. After that, if still there is a doubt left, then you may come. And, if everything else is right about you, I just may answer your question. Now the person will say, but you know what? I read yours and I like the other one. I'm saying, great, good for you. Why are you here asking me this? Remember, that's the kind of clarity, viveka buddhi, but the clarity, the prajna, okay, where everyone is expected to have if you want to get into serious subjects like this. Even after that, the point I will ask them, I said, okay, so you liked some things. What is the most impressive thing that you found into other person's research, which again say going against me or even otherwise? Somebody comes and says, hey, I heard about some very impressive work of someone. Have you heard about this so and so? I said, no, I have heard, maybe not. He says, oh, I was totally impressed. I said, what were you impressed about? The person says, lots of things. I said, okay, tell me that one thing that you are most impressed about, because that's the easy way to go. But there is more to it, because quickly I can judge the quality, intellect of this person and decide whether I want to waste my time or not, whether I want to spend time or not. That's just a practical consideration. But from a purely scientific point of view, of course, I mean, the practical consideration eventually decides the Shastra, the method. Ye Shastra Vidimusruja Vartate Kamakarata, so the method to madness comes from that. Yastesham Swaira Kathasta Eva Bhavanti Shastrani. That is what Bhrutahari says, right? Yastesham Swaira Kathasta. Okay, the random talk of intellectual, realized individuals is what basically turns into a science, turns into a method. It's based on an empirical experience. Okay, huge experience is there behind these models like this, such as this doubt clearing machine. So the critic or criticism must be a piecemeal. You say, well, you know what, looking at this, I have a problem with the problem. Like, why are you even trying to decide when Ramayana happened, when Ramayana is not even a reality, just a mythology? Okay, so now instead of like deciding whether 12,209 BC is right or wrong, the question is Ramayana really a history or not? Now, my response could be, well, I consider Ramayana as a history. Are you saying you don't consider Ramayana as a itihasa? The person says, yeah, no, I don't consider it. I said, okay. I mean, if I have a time, I may say, well, do you want to know why Ramayana is a history? Are you aware of something as a history? So I'm going to do this in a Socratic method. But I may actually, in my subjective or even very, personal judgment based on my priorities, I say, well, okay, so if you don't consider Ramayana as a itihasa, there is nothing common for us to discuss. My point is, the conversation can come to an end at any point for all kinds of reasons. Some people will simply run away with the tail between the legs because they don't have an answer. Other person will say the person in front of me is a foolish and I don't want to waste time. Another time, even a person, someone like me, would continue to engage another individual even when I know he's utterly foolish. I may have some objectives. Actually, some of the trolls of mine, they say, "Oh, I'm surprised. How come Nilesh is still engaging me?" There is another lady. She says, "Oh, I don't know why he still doesn't block me." I mean, there is no end to the humor, in this space. And actually, I'm glad that they recognize it. Like some person says, how come he's still engaging me? And some lady saying, how come he doesn't block me? Well, guess what? Actually, they are right. There is a reason why I'm not blocking someone, and there is a reason why I'm engaging a fool. There could be a reason. There is a reason why I would engage a very intelligent person or ask for that person's time. These things are not to be revealed because then it loses the fun of it. It's like a stock tip, even if you have a true inside information and suppose there are no legal boundaries there and therefore you can give it, guess what? As soon as you give that information, immediately there is a leveling off in the market, that particular advantage of the unbalanced flow of information or awareness of information, it just goes away. So in this kind of strategic cases, I feel very good when the person says, how come this person still engages me? Or somebody saying, how come this person doesn't block me? Well, your time may come, okay? Sooner than later, possibly, and as sometime a surprise. Anyways, understand it's a privilege, guys, okay, when we get to discuss this. When I give talks, I consider people, I consider it as my privilege that I have an audience, okay? Very curious, intelligent people taking their personal time off, which they could be doing a lot of other interesting thing and listening to me. When somebody watches my YouTube video, I consider that as a privilege on my part. Now, it's also important for the person who watches it to understand that this is a privilege. Okay, the kind of information that is available to us now, what we can do through social media, it was a absolute privilege then before. Okay, to actually go to a lecture and have an opportunity to listen. Now the radio changed that, and then the TV changed that. The social media is now changing it. It's still a privilege. It's important because now we have so much choice. A choice to a listener, okay, but also a choice to a person who is talking about a special subject. Back to this, the critic or criticism must be a piecemeal for all practical reasons, okay, all uh, common sense reasons, and for all scientific logical reasons. Piecemeal at a time. You cannot take two issues simultaneously. You can take as many issues as you want for discussion, as long as both parties are willing to discuss or answer or respond or whatever, but one particular subject at a time. And so think of this here in this doubt clearing machine as if there are 7 specific, independent, different subjects. So one subject at a time. You can discuss all of them. All objections are fine. One subject at a time. Now, what happens? They are all connected, if you realize that. That's why one subject at a time. Because if somebody has erred in some one place, very likely it has affected others. So the person will say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm wrong here. Guess what? We don't need to discuss the other things. Okay. But I'm going to also show you some very interesting things. How, with a confusion of the thinking, not knowing how to properly think, how some of my trolls will object to two things. And that's also problematic for a different reason. Okay, you cannot object to two things. And when the subject comes, we get into Khandan. I will explain that, but let's go further. So yes, once you have a problem, you know that to solve that, you have to put forward a theory, a conjecture, a guess, plausible solution. Once you define it, it immediately defines what is evidence, what is not evidence, because as Einstein said, it is the theory that tells us what can be observed. In a simple language, it is the theory. Once you define the theory, and if it is scientific in nature, it immediately puts the constraints on what is to be considered as evidence, and it must be included, and what is to be considered as not evidence, and it must not be included. Okay. Once you have that, then you have to figure out, how am I going to objectively test it? Now, some person will say, well, I don't want to objectively test it. Oh, fool. Nonsense. No, then you are not doing this science. You are not using Indian Darshan Shastra. You are not into knowing the truth. That can be only known through the pramanas. And not just one pramana. Sometimes when we are helpless, we go with a one pramana. Okay, that's a compromise. Many people have this faulty notion that, one pramana is okay. No, one pramana is okay. It's an optimized view. For example, if I want to go to the airport and I go into a particular city, to the local, someone I can trust at the hotel, manager, whatever, or whoever, friends, you say, hey, at this time I'm leaving from my hotel to the airport. How long would it take me to go to the airport? The person says about 30 minutes at this time of the year. I don't, let's say I choose not to ask many other folks. That's simply just as an optimized strategy. Okay, I don't want to waste my time. I'm going to trust that, maybe add my own factor and say, okay, I'm going to start 1 hour before that. Or my flight is 6 hours from now, so it doesn't matter. I'm leaving right now. Just relax, enjoy the scenery, and just drive. Okay, so I am going to use that information in a very productive way. Therefore, I may not ask others. But if I need, for example, like deciding which job to take, which city, who to marry, and whatever the information, which school you are to send your kids, you might do more thorough analysis. Okay, so it depends on the context. It is a optimization criteria, optimization strategy that you're using. That's not to be confused. Just one pramana is enough. No, it's always a triangulation, quadrangulation of pramana. In the modern scientific method, it's a triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing. Even that's not sufficient. In the context of a theory, in the context of a background knowledge, in the context of solving a specific problem. You cannot just discuss for the heck of it just because you have a time. No, there is a specific problem that you're trying to solve. It has to be in the context of that. And you have to find the answer. Did you solve the problem? What is your answer? If you don't have an answer, but you're just objecting to somebody else, hell, don't waste that person's time. Okay? Or make a fool of yourself in public light. So that's the idea behind it. behind this. Okay, same thing for once you decide what the theory is, what the evidence is, how you are going to objectively test that evidence. All of these criteria will lead you to a specific set of background knowledge, information. You must have it. If you don't have it, you have to acquire it. Nobody is going to come and help you unless you are humble and ask for help. Okay, knowing well that they may not have a time to help you, and so on. And of course, by each evidence, you draw inference. It's a must. And then you unify them together. And if you are lucky, successful, it leads you to the solution. That's a sadhya. And then the prameya becomes a siddhanta. Okay, your guess conjecture becomes a established theory. Okay. Now, the other thing that happens is this. People use the word triangulation, but they truly don't understand what the hell is triangulation. For example, somebody will say, well, I read somewhere, or my guru says this, my some Swamiji, some famous acharya says this. Again, as an optimization strategy, okay? Or based on a shraddha, you may just accept that. But remember, if some other person doesn't agree with that, then either you just say, okay, hey, that's fine, you don't agree, but I'm happy with it, I'm going to go away with life. But there is no reason you should fight with that person, because you say, oh, you're wrong, then there is a discussion. That's not a bad thing. But understand, the your level of shraddha is may not be that person's shraddha, and what you are satisfied with some pramana, the other person may not be satisfied. You may be okay with not doing triangulation. That is your personal choice, the uh, freedom of thought, freedom of choice. I mean, in decision making. But you cannot impose that on others. Be happy in your own world. But if you want to understand the scientific method, okay, ye shastra vidimustruja, if you want to follow properly the scientific method, a shastra method, whether it is a darshana shastra, modern science is just a small fraction of what the Nyaya Darshana is or Darshan Shastra is. That's not a subject today. But even in this triangulation, you must triangulate. What is that? So if you start with a specific piece of evidence, a piece of information, you have to find a way how you can objectively test it. That's not only sufficient, but once you objectively test it, what kind of inference you can draw. The inference is always in the form of a piece of information that you did not have before, or it also comes in the form of a piece of information in such a fashion that you eliminate certain possibilities. It adds constraints on your solution, the final solution that you're looking for. If those two things don't happen, there is no objective testing and there are no constraints, okay? Or it doesn't lead you to a specific, then a specific information, then you have not done this triangulation well. Now, you can look at this triangulation from all different points of view. Let's say you objectively test something, immediately you would able to answer, oh, now that I did this, that particular observation, say, again, sticking to Ramayana, oh, that particular observation from Aranyakanda is now valid. I didn't know if that was possible. Now the testing is telling me, yeah, it is possible. But that's not sufficient. You have to also answer the question, because of the result of your objective testing, what is that additional piece of information, nishkarsha, inference, prediction, whatever it is that you have acquired. As I said, it could be in the form of a specific piece of information or elimination of something, which is also constraint piece of information. That has to happen with every single time you test a single piece of evidence. Very rarely you have only one piece of evidence, like Ramayana, just the Khagol Shastra, which is like astronomy descriptions, close to 600 observation. You're going to test each one of them. Then you might sometimes test in groups and so on. And you have to bring all those inferences together, put together as a jigsaw puzzle, as if solving a jigsaw puzzle, solving a crossword puzzle. That's going to lead you to your answer, the question that you're trying to find answer for. The last one there. So if you start with certain nishkarsha, now this is where many Mahabharata dating researcher, Ramayana dating researchers, those who are no longer with us, but even those who are around, they start. Many times they start with Anuman. They say, Ramayana happened, Ramayana cannot happen before 5000 BC. So Ramayana happened 5000 BC. Oh, Mahabharata happened 3009 BC. Why? Oh, that's what I feel. Okay, so that's your conclusion. person has to answer. Now, they may not understand, but if you, as a person studying somebody's work, or you as an original researcher, you are trying to do your own work and you have some gut feel that I think this might have happened here. Yeah, just because I think, therefore, no, that's not how it works. You have a certain conclusion, you have to ask the question, certain inference, you have to say, based on what? What evidence? And somebody will say, well, yeah, I read it in that Purana. That's not sufficient. Now you ask the question, okay, you read it in that Purana, that is good. In the absence of any other evidence, if nobody is objecting to it, then some statement in Purana is sufficient, Purana or anywhere. But somebody says, well, I have read something else or I don't agree with it, then the discussion begins. Why do you not agree? Which means somebody has something more information that this first fellow does not have. So one question to ask is, based on what evidence you drew this conclusion? And the second one, did you objectively validate that evidence? So remember, that's triangulation. Okay, let's go further. Piecemeal critic. We already talked about it. There is another aspect, which is to say, people will say, so Nilesh, are you saying that there is no way I can object to two, three things? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can object. Most fools do. My point is, it's not correct. And that's not my point. That is the point of modern science. That is the point of Darshana Shastra. Okay, that's the point of Nyaya Darshana. It's a piecemeal critique, common sense. But if it's common sense is not there, just you have to accept it. Otherwise, don't waste my time. That is as simple as that. Read the books, Karl Popper, Nyaya Darshana, Sankhya Darshana, Vaisheshika, Yoga Darshana, Purva Uttara Mimamsa, become familiar with it. Even other Jain Darshana, Buddhist Darshana, Charvaka Darshana, you'll find Lokayata, you'll hear the term. Okay, you can read that. Piecemeal critic, okay, fallacies, futilities, you can read all that information. Circular reasoning. You have to become expert in all these subjects. So piecemeal critic, why we should do it, I explained it. But is there a way we can bring it, these different pieces of, say, the doubt clearing machine, and can we assess a particular claim based on it? Yeah, the answer is yes. When we are objecting, it needs to be done like this. But if we want to have a visual view for how does this claim compares with another claim, actually, I'll tell you, some of the works are so lousy that even this kind of comparison becomes impossible. And when I get time, I'll tell you this in the context of Ramayana dating, but also Mahabharata dating. But let's give a benefit of doubt and let's say, yeah, it is possible. Then can we represent? I'm going to show that and we will stop. Those about 5, 6, 7 elements from the doubt clearing machine, I'm combining them and putting it into 3 categories, 3 axes. Imagine the first x-axis is like enabling of a scientific theory and corresponding evidence collection. Have you stated your theory? Is this scientific? Is this generic? Is this universal? Yes, check, check, check. And based on that theory, have you collected all the evidence? Making sure that only that evidence is collected which is dictated by the theory, and anything that is not dictated by the theory is not included. Okay, there is both, like a khandan and mandan, sowing the seeds and removing the weeds. Okay, that's taken care of. Has it been taken care of? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, then you put yourself here. If it's a no, you put it here. If you're done somewhere in between, you can put yourself here. The next question to ask is, now that you have the evidence, have you objectively tested it? How much of it you have objectively tested it? Okay, based on that, you will now go along this axis. So depending on where you are, now you're going to go along this axis. So I'll just show it here, line, so that people are not confused where I'm drawing the line. Once that is done, now every time you test a piece of evidence, you objectively test it, you draw inference, you keep on doing this until you exhaust yourself of all evidence. You bring it together as a solving the jigsaw puzzle, solving a crossword puzzle. Were you successful? To what extent you were successful? And therefore, what is your answer? That is that third axis of Z. You can mark it here, how far you're successful, and then your answer. Now, if somebody is right here, that means, the person really did not succeed anywhere. It's a very lousy work. If person is at this desired test or close to it, at its desired state, then that's like a god, playing god, I would say. But if you are very close to it, that's a cause for celebration. Okay, cause for celebration. It's not very easy to get here. Now, in this context, I'm going to look at 4 Ramayana claims, show a visual comparison, and then all of them together, and we start. So first claim, for example, don't know exactly when, about in last 50, 60 years, yeah, 60, 70, 80 years or so. Last 100 years to be safe, okay? In fact, that will be applicable to everyone. So the 4 claims I'm going to share with you for the dating of Ramayana are from the last 100 years. Sri M.R. Yardi, Dr. Yardi, Professor Yardi, he was a mathematician, brilliant mathematician. He proposed a date for Ramayana about 1500 BCE. That's like 3,500 years ago. And if he has written a book, it's there in archive.org, like type M.R. Yardi and you will get that book, multiple other places, okay? And if you try to take that star for Yardi and try to place it here based on the quality of his research, it will fall here, very close to the or right on the undesired state. Why is that? Well, he didn't propose the theory. So since he hasn't a theory, there is no question of he collecting the evidence. It was extremely haphazard. In fact, he collects 0 evidence. How's that? Forget the theory. So whether he collected right evidence or not is a different issue, but he did not collect any evidence. He kind of looked at it and said, whatever, therefore I'm asking you to, encouraging you to read the book. He says, well, I think it happened 1500 BC. Now he gives his logic. The point is he does not use any evidence from Valmiki Ramayana. What about successful objective testing of bloody what? he has not used any evidence from the Valmiki Ramayana. There is no question of testing any evidence. So he's 0 on that. Okay. And on successful unification, well, guess what? Unification of what? There is no theory, there is no evidence, there is no objective testing. So no inference, no individual inference, no cumulative inference. There is nothing. So he basically said, no, I gave him a benefit of doubt and slightly moved up there, only to show that as opposed to there are like my trolls, but many celebrated idiots, okay, who will who will do criticism of my work or work of others, but they themselves have not shown any ability to do any of this. And when they actually try to do it, they create more disaster. Okay. We will talk about it when time permits. In comparison, I would say Sri M.R. Yardi made an attempt. So at least give us a data point. So now we said, 1500 BC, huh? Okay, I wonder how did he reach at it? And you go to and ask him, then he will give his logic. That is his book. You read it. If you're convinced, guys, be happy. Just don't come and waste my time. Okay. It's extremely lousy work, lousy in the sense of when you compare this tulana, against the basics of scientific method, basics of darshana principles. Let's go to the next one. Sri Pushkar Bhatnagarji, about 25, 30 years ago or so, he proposed a date for Ramayana. Let me show where I want to mark his position, and then I can explain why. Why he's just on this line and somewhat above, but no movement in this direction or no movement in this direction. That's because he did not propose any theory, did not put forward any theory, never mind scientific, never mind generic, never mind universal. So there was no question of collecting any evidence, and he didn't. Okay, let me tell you the other evidence. Because he did not put forward a theory, because he did not look at multiple evidence, he didn't even understand the concept possibly, or if he did, actually what he has done is a disaster par excellence. Therefore, there is no successful unification. Even he didn't understand the concept of unification. Therefore, this one is not going anywhere in this Z direction. Now, he did something very interesting. It was a lot of hard work, and kudos to him. In fact, in his later years, he was seriously ill and finally succumbed to that particular disease. When I was researching Ramayana, I tried, frantically to get in touch with him. This is during the days of emails and whatnot, but it was not very easy to identify people. Even So, anyways, I made multiple attempts, and finally, one day, his daughter wrote to me and letting me know that Sri Pushkar Bhatnagarji is no more. Okay, I mean that's a sad story, but what he has done, so one thing that he did was something worth mentioning is this. Out of Valmiki Ramayana 600 plus observations, again, remember astronomy observations, remember he didn't have any theory, so he didn't feel compelled to isolate a certain type of evidence. I mean, that just concept was alien to him. The basics of logic of scientific method was alien to him. In spite of that, what he has done, I mean, we have to give him a credit. Okay. One reference which is decisively interpolated. When we get to that reference, I will explain why it is decisively interpolated. But he took that reference, and that reference says the planets were in a Uccha Sthiti, exalted, as a sort of a crude translation. But Valmiki Ramayana doesn't tell you anything what is meant by exalted. So what I'm going to tell you next does not come from Valmiki Ramayana. So he must have done some research. Unfortunately, I never met him. So I don't know how that exact process worked. With his knowledge or maybe asking around, he found out, which I'm aware, that from Parashar Hora Shastra, the astrology text, the Phala Jyotisha text, there is a definition, and that these definitions, now recently I read something that these definitions of when a particular graha is to be considered as in a uccha position in a particular nakshatra, particular rashi, that has changed over the years. I have read that. I have no knowledge of this. But anyway, so he took this definition from Parashara Hora Shastra and assumed those 5 planets must be these, which is kind of visible planets plus sun and moon, and went on to the search to find out a astronomy combination where these all 5, 6 could be matched. And to his credit, he did find a combination that comes around 5000 BCE, 5889. Don't hold me to that, but around 5000 BCE. And he said, that's the birth of Rama's birth year for Rama. The only successful part or the useful part of this is that at least Pushkar Bhatnagarji showed what is meant by objective testing, at least for his followers. Okay. And there are his followers who don't understand a word of astronomy. Okay. Popular names, by the way. They publish lots of books. They are sticking to the date of Pushkar Bhatnagarji. Good for him. Okay. So, and then there are many others who have simply borrowed his date without understanding what Pushkar Bhatnagarji has done. But to give him a credit that at least he took one reference from Valmiki Ramayana. When the explanation is not there in Valmiki Ramayana, he went to additional text, which is fair. I mean, in order to understand something, you go there because the information doesn't exist in Valmiki Ramayana. That's fine. But if the information exists, and then you take information from somewhere outside which contradicts with Valmiki Ramayana, now there is a problem. That wasn't the issue with Pushkar Bhatnagarji. So he took something from Parashar Hora Shastra. That is by itself problematic. We don't have to even discuss it. We'll simply say why that observation is interpolated. And in any case, even if you take this, rest of the 600 plus astronomy evidence does not agree with his date. But to give him a credit, he showed what is objective testing to himself and to his cheerleaders. The cheerleaders don't understand it. The cheerleaders are around, although Pushkar Bhatnagarji has gone, and cheerleaders do not understand it, but they blindly copy this date. I will give you as a homework to figure out who these cheerleaders are, for who blindly borrow the claim of 5114 BC of Pushkar Bhatnagarji for the timing of Ramayana. Okay, so that's where he fits there, and I explain why. Let's go look at Shri P.V. Vartak, Dr. P.V. Vartak. He proposed 7300 BCE You can watch my other videos where I have shown why that is wrong. My book explains that. There is a whole chapter on work of Pushkar Bhatnagarji, on Dr. Vartak, and then one chapter on two researchers, Yardi, that I just mentioned, and then there is another combination. Three different individuals wrote a book together, and they just state the date of Ram Ravan Yuddha, Rama's birth. They don't give explanation how they arrived at that. Okay, so it's not very easy to critique that book, but still I have made an attempt, and you can read the book that I showed you, the historic Rama 12,209 BC, or that book's translation in Hindi or Marathi, Aityasik Ram, to figure that out, to identify what it is. Okay, so PV Vartak, yeah. Now, if I have to place his work in the context of this cube, I would put it somewhere here. In fact, I created a Marathi video on this same subject, and I was saying, and that's true here too, the language wouldn't change that this star possibly can be moved here. Okay, so yes, he showed many objective testing to be successful, although in an ultimate analysis wrong, but looking at the individual one, he did a great job there. In fact, in my humble estimation, the work of Dr. P.V. Vartak, notwithstanding that it's ultimately the wrong date for Ramayana, and I'm not referring to only his Ramayana work, is so great that in my humble estimation, Dr. P.V. Vartak deserves a Bharat Ratna, nothing less. Now, of course, when people hear that, some people will laugh, some people will make faces, other people will nod in agreement. All kinds of reactions are expected. Okay, it's that impressive. And it's me who is saying this, who also says that the claim of Dr. Vartak of 7,300 BC is wrong, decisively false. Okay, so anyway, so that's where I would represent him. And as I said, actually, it can be shown somewhere here on this face. But what happens is it's very difficult to show something in between, and someone may think it's on that face. And the problem with that is that will appear like a successful unification, which is not the case. Okay, so in terms of enabling of a scientific theory and corresponding evidence, yes, absolutely good job. But in terms of successful unification, no, and successful objective testing, no. So just understand, definitely what Dr. Vartak did is way better, by miles and miles better than what Yardi did, which is almost did nothing, so to say, or what Pushkar Bhatnagarji did with that at least one observation and showing objective testing in astronomy sense. Truly good work in, say, 90s. Okay, why? Because if you take all the researchers, with the exception of likes of say Dr. Vartak of that time, you will find absolutely the quality of work is extremely poor related to the dating of Mahabharata or dating of Ramayana. I'm not saying general work in Indic space. I'm talking of the dating of Ramayana and dating of Mahabharata. Okay, in that context, actually, what Pushkar Bhatnagarji did is good, even the one data point out of 300, or sorry, out of 600, and he goes wrong on all other counts. It's a disaster. It's a royal disaster. But still, I'm giving a credit which I think is due. In comparison to Bhatnagarji or Yardiji, Dr. Vartak's work is way apart, way superior, and still it falls short if compared using this diagram. Okay, finally, I'm showing mine. Now, of course, you will see that mark and people say, oh, come on, you're going to give yourself marks. No, I want you to criticize it. I want you to critique it and tell me, okay, prove it to me that this is not correct. So looking at this, is there a scientific theory, a statement of a theory? Is it generic? Is it universal? Yes. 110 marks out of 100 on the statement of a theory. Astronomy descriptions of Valmiki Ramayana are descriptions of Ramayana times. Now, based on that theory, did I collect all the evidence? Yes, check. I might have missed something because I missed it, but not deliberately. close to 600 pieces of evidence, that's the corresponding evidence, good marks. So this marker, I mean, this star should be here in just on that one axis. Now, what about successful objective testing? I could test almost all of them, like say 99%. Okay. So actually, this marker could be moved where I have shown is actually correct. But if it should be visually easy to understand, then I can actually move this blue star slightly below, showing, hey, there is some gap, like some cases. Actually, so, I'm trying to think which one is not. There is not much, but there are some observations, I would say, objectively tested, they do not match. So out of say 600 or out of 575, about 550 perfectly match for 12,209, but then there are close to 25, less than 25, that do not match for 12,209 prima facie. Okay, and therefore successful objective testing, well, objective testing was successful, by the way, it's just that they do not match. Okay, this is a very subtle point, maybe we'll cover it some other time. So objective testing I could do for 100% of the evidence. Out of that, some, what percent is that? Okay, about 4% of that evidence does not directly prima facie agree with 12,209. Okay, so where do I put it? I want to take it away from unification, okay, because all the evidence didn't go there. Okay, there was some, but successful objective testing, actually it's 100%. So in fact, I can take this star and move it even further up and no problem there. The third one, last one, the successful unification, I already gave the answer. Out of 575, 550 lead me to 12,209, and about 25, just shy of 25, they do not prima facie. Remember, prima facie, they do not agree with 12,209. And therefore, as far as the successful unification of all the evidence towards 12,209 goes, BC goes, there is a small gap. And that gap I am showing by placing this star slightly away from this orange star. So there is this gap. Okay, so it's like saying the tennis player who won the match or won the tournament in the final game, he did not beat the opponent like 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, but it was like a 6-0, 6-1, 6-0, something like this. Just as an analogy, only as a metaphor, it helps you. Okay, that's what it is. Just four of them combined together. That's what they are. So visually, you can actually look at them and see how they would possibly look like. Here is Mr. Yardi, okay, practically at the undesired state. Sri Pushkar Bhatnagarji, at least 1 out of 600 observation he took. Although he took an interpolated reference, also he in a way misrepresented, but not going into those details. Let's say we accept that that is a Valmiki Ramayana observation, so be it. And since Valmiki Ramayana doesn't give information, he went on looking for some explanation and he found one in Parashar Hora Shastra. Yeah, I would have done the same thing, possibly in his shoes. He took that and then tried to look for the latest instance. Okay, the possible instance starting from our times going backwards. Okay, when those all 5 planets could match with the description of Parashar Hora Shastra and the interpretation of Valmiki Ramayana interpolated verse. Lots of problems here, but he did that and he did not fake it. So at least he showed how a objective matching, objective testing is done, which 99% of current Mahabharata and Ramayana dating researchers lack. So I'm giving that 1 point there. If you come to Dr. P.V. Vartak, he did a good job on the theory. He did a good job on collecting the evidence. In fact, he didn't do a very good job on the theory, but only for a reason that he assumed that people around him are intelligent, and he was wrong in that judgment. Okay. I also started with that assumption. I said, I'll give you experience another time. Okay. So not to make it longer. But since I said that, let me quickly see if I can tell you the story. The first time in the Indic space, I went to India in the Indic research context, like 2017, okay, end of 2016. And I gave a lecture in few places, but one place I gave a lecture, and I mean, I was away from India for a long time, at least in the social setting, and especially in the Indic research context. I was doing research on my own. So when I was giving a lecture, I didn't know exactly where to focus, at what level I should deliver the lecture. And in my naivety, I thought, like, I'm going for this lecture. Obviously, the people, all the experts are going to come. There were not many even so-called experts there. There were some great individuals there. This was a talk, my first talk at Sangam Talks, okay, from late 2016. It came out early 2017. You can go and check that. I wasn't nervous, but I was concerned. And my concern was the lecture I'm going to give. One extreme concern was, will they understand it? Now, that was not my concern. That should have been my concern in retrospect. But I was thinking, whatever I'm going to say, am I going to be too trivial and too simplistic? And this is, man, we know this about Mahabharata and Ramayana. Why are you wasting our time? We know science, we know objective testing, we know theory, we know the triangulation. Why are you wasting time? That was my concern. But I said, hey, let's not take everything for granted. At least as a very high level, I will mention it. And the crowd was absolutely phenomenal. Okay, small crowd. Actually, it was a very noisy place. It was at a press club of India, and some big typical tamasha dance party was going on outside. So I couldn't hear myself. Forget people hearing me. But the team of Sangam Talk, Rahul Diwan and his team did a phenomenal job. They separated the noise, with the available technology. And that talk can be seen. I think it's a dating of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So the point I was mentioning this is, in deciding what level to focus, it's not, if Dr. Vartak kind of missed it, like he assumed that people know, but people didn't know, and therefore they gave him bad names. Okay. When they did not understand, they said, oh, Vartak talks rubbish, because they did not understand it. Okay. The point is, Vartak did not explicitly stated the theory. And my guess is, because he assumed, just like me, or misassumed, just like me, that these people are all smart people. Well, they're not smart people. I mean, there are very few smart people, whichever way you want to say it. So he did not explicitly state it, I'm saying. But if you read his book, Vasta Ramayan or Swayambhu, or its translation in other languages, Hindi and English, you will get a full sense that his theory is clear. Okay, just like what I've stated. Not only that, irrespective of notwithstanding the fact that he did not explicitly state the theory, in reality, he went out there into Ramayana and Mahabharata, again referring to Ramayana and Mahabharata, and extracted every single possible interesting observation, description he could think of, and then tried to objectively test it. Just for this, he can be given a Bharat Ratna. Okay. So there he gets a full credit. Now, so why do I not take this star and put it on here? Like full marks for the theory, full marks for the evidence. I have done this for a reason. Again, not go into it. I will encourage you to read any of my books. Okay, but first two books, When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? The Historic Rama. There is one chapter dedicated on the work of Dr. P.V. Vartak. In case of Mahabharata, on his dating of Mahabharata. In case of Ramayana, on his dating of Ramayana. You will start understanding why I have not placed this star right here. The second one, in terms of successful objective testing, in both cases, Mahabharata, Ramayana, his approach is not consistent. So when objectively something can be tested astronomically, he does it. But when he thought he could not test it, or a simple objective testing did not match with what he wanted to see for his proposed date, then he went into some other kind of psychological and different types of interpretations. So therefore, his criteria is not consistent, and therefore, I don't want to give a very high marks on the successful objective testing. And frankly, um, Again, just like my situation, so did I successfully objectively test 600, 575 pieces of evidence? The answer is yes. But 22 do not match for 12,209 BCE. Something similar, but on a much larger scale. What happens is, once he proposed a year, okay, it's very clear. For example, 7,000 BCE, and Valmiki Ramayana has a description of Chaitra. Chaitram Sri Manayam Masa Punya Pushpita Kanana. At the time of Ramayana, during the month of Chaitra, the forest used to be blooming with flowers, filled with flowers. But if you look at 7,000 BCE, the date of proposed by Dr. Vartak for Ramayana, or 5,000 BC proposed by Sri, or could be Dr. Tu, I think he had a PhD, but not spending too much time on that snobby aspect, how I address him. What Yardi, sorry, not Yardi, forgive me, what Bhatnagarji proposed. Yardi, we will not even go there right now. We will come back in another time. What Bhatnagarji proposed, 5,000, and he was not a PhD, so hey, he was like me in that respect. What Bhatnagarji proposed, 5,000 BC, that time the lunar month of Chaitra occurred at the peak of winter in both cases. Now people will say, oh, 7,000 BC, 5,000 BC, how can be the same? Well, for that you have to understand the basics of astronomy 101. The change, the Sampata Chalan, and therefore the change or the shift of a lunar month, Indian lunar month, Chaitra, Vaishak, Jyeshtha, Ashad, Shravan, Bhadrapad, Ashwin, Kartik, Margashira, Paush, Magh, Falgun, etc., with respect to the season, is there, but it's very slow. That even the 2,000 years do not make any difference, or may not make a difference. To just give you a simple example, there is another uh, troll, idiotic troll, or a group of idiotic trolls, plural, okay, trying to just find some kind of faults with my analysis or my claims. I welcome that, because the strength of a theory, strength of a claim, a truthful claim, a original work is not understood. It's not understood even by the original researchers and of course the people, until and unless it is resisted by multiple attempts. And actually it is understood in the ability of the claim and a theory to successfully thwart all those attempts and show why that is still a better theory. So for that manthan to happen, we need this. In Marathi, khata nata yare, shuddha honi zare. We need all kinds of folks, okay, to come. It will be phenomenal if intelligent people come and actually give me run for the money. Unfortunately, that has not happened. There are very few exceptions, like a small sparks once in a while, like late Prabhakar Fadnis. Or I have said this before on Bharat Rakshak Forum, few individuals, who ask pertinent question. One, Brahaspati, we used to call him there, now Diggaj. Or there was another individual who was very irritating. Now he has become my friend, by the way. Okay, his handle name there was Peter. Okay, on the Bharat Rakshak Forum. Now he has become my Facebook friend. There was somebody, Arjun. His handle was Arjun. That was not his real name. Who actually helped me by identifying some good number of errors, which I fixed. And frankly, my theory and my same claim became more stronger. Okay. Same thing with Prabhakar Fadnisji, late Prabhakar Fadnisji. And there may be a few others. I mean, this happens all the time. Rupa Bhati is another one to mention. Jivan Rav is another one. Shiva Shastri. God, let me not go on that tangent. I can think of possibly 10 other names. But these 20 names are nothing in comparison to the utter foolishness and nonsense that, I have to hear. And, I can just say this person has not read my book, or if he has read it, he has not understood it, he or she, whatever. Okay. I'm just trying to be sexually fluid in terms of addressing folks here. Okay. Because I do know that number of these trolls are fluid in their behavior. Okay. I'll not go into the details since that's not relevant. But anyways, okay. So I was talking of Dr. Vartak. So he didn't mention this. That's fine, but he deserves a Bharat Ratna. That doesn't mean he will get it. In fact, look at some of the list of Bharat Ratna, and we should be glad right now with the current government. Actually, some of the good job they are doing in making a selection of the Padma awards and whatnot. But you will actually find you can make a list of Bharat Ratnas who have been awarded Bharat Ratna that you can say, oh, this guy or this individual, how did he or she got Bharat Ratna? You can easily say, they didn't deserve it. Same thing for Padma Vibhushan, Padma Bhushan, Padma Shri, and so on. Okay. I mean, that's a well-known information out there, and you can check it. Okay, so this is my last slide, by the way. So I'll see you soon in part 4 of Valmiki Ramayana or Ramayana KalaNirnaya. Do write your comments. Anything that you see here, write your comments related to it in the comment section of this YouTube video, not anywhere else. Don't send me emails. They will not be read, and so on and so forth. Something else, when you write the comments here, I mean, this request is for sincere folks. The idiots can do their same nonsense, what they're good at. And social media provides enough good tools to deal with those individuals. But those who are sincere, not only I want you to put your comments related to this video in the YouTube comments to this particular video when it comes out. But it's also important that you stick to the subject. So ask the questions which are related to what I covered, not like asking something that was not covered in this video. Okay, this is also important. All right, I'll see you soon in next part 4 of Ramayana KalaNirnaya. Until then, namaskar.